In August 2016, an Emirates Boeing 777 crashed onto a runway in Dubai just moments after an aborted landing, leading to the first major accident in the history of the well-known air carrier. Today we are going to take a look on how a small switch brought big trouble to one of the world's largest airlines. But first, a small reminder from me as a new YouTuber. If you like what you see, please subscribe for more future aviation videos. It helps me out a lot. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Welcome to Airspace. On August 3rd, 2016, Emirates Flight 521 had almost completed its 3.5-hour journey from Trivandrum International Airport in India to Dubai. The Boeing 777 was carrying 282 passengers and 18 crew members. Approximately an hour before landing, the captain and the first officer held their approach briefing, in which they discussed the various procedures and weather phenomena they would encounter during their approach. The weather report indicated a steady headwind for runway 12 left and a 6-kilometer visibility at a temperature of 48 degrees Celsius. Very hot indeed, but quite normal in Dubai during summertime. The weather report also indicated the possibility of a so-called windshear, a phenomenon in which the wind direction and speed rapidly change from one direction to another during descent. As the aircraft joined the approach to runway 12 left, the crew noted that the wind was now a tailwind, a situation that would make the landing a little more difficult. What the crew did not know at this point was that 2 other flights had already aborted their landings before them due to the wind situation, which had proven to be more difficult than they anticipated. Nevertheless, the commander guided the plane down the approach path in a safe and stable manner until it reached a position of 40 feet above the runway, where the captain initiated the so-called flare, which is basically the act of bringing the aircraft's nose up just slightly and reducing the engine power so that the aircraft may settle onto the runway. As he did so, he noticed right away that the aircraft was going to float down the runway a little longer than he anticipated. He exclaimed, "Oops, thermals," as he perceived the additional lift as coming from the very hot air rising from the runway surface. In fact, the wind had shifted to a headwind again, just as he started his flare, but this went unnoticed by the crew. This headwind now provided additional lift. A few seconds later, the captain realized that the aircraft would not touch down in the designated touchdown zone and decided to go around, just a moment before the aircraft warning systems issued a warning indicating the landing attempt had been too long. In order to go around, the captain pushed the so-called takeoff and go-around switch, called the toga switch, on the aircraft's thrust levers. He commanded the airplane's nose to point 7.5 degrees up and ordered the first officer to retract the flaps to lower the drag of the plane. Also, as the first officer confirmed that the aircraft was climbing again, the captain ordered the landing gear should be retracted. Just seconds later, the captain noticed that the aircraft was descending again and losing speed significantly. He thought that to be because of a wind shear, and he pushed the thrust levers fully forward. The Boeing 777's engine started to spin up slowly, but since they are among the largest aircraft engines in the world, they did not provide sufficient thrust immediately. The aircraft hit the runway with its tail first, 18 seconds after the captain had attempted to go around. But what had happened that caused the airplane to descend again after the initiation of the go-around? As almost always in aviation accidents, it was not a single cause that led to the accident. When the captain initiated his flare, he brought the airplane in a position just 2 feet above the runway surface. Unlucky, one could say. At this point, he was fully concentrated on controlling the airplane and keeping it aligned with the runway centerline. What he did not know was that the airplane had actually touched down just seconds later very smoothly, already for about 6 seconds. In the captain and the first officer's perception, the aircraft stayed airborne the entire time. During these 6 seconds of wheel-to-runway contact, the captain decided to abort the landing attempt and go around. In this time frame, he pushed the toga switches, which is the normal procedure when going around. Normally, this would send a command to the engine computers to provide maximum thrust. What the crew did not realize is that the aircraft's engine computers never actually provided thrust after pushing the toga switch. This is because these switches have no effect when the aircraft is on ground. Such a design choice might seem rather strange, but there is a reason behind it. Imagine a pilot is trying to park his plane at the gate and accidentally bumps one of these switches. You wouldn't want the plane's engines accelerating to full speed while parking. Thinking that his toga switch command would lead the engines to providing full power, the captain pulled up the aircraft's nose. With the speed of the aircraft still high from the approach, it was able to climb up to 85 feet, or 26 meters, above the runway until it got so slow that the wings could not provide sufficient lift for flight, and the plane crashed back onto the runway. It came to rest just off the runway, having spun almost 180 degrees with its right engine ripped off. Several small fires started. The commander, only slightly injured after the impact, ordered an emergency evacuation of the plane, while the airport's fire services responded to the crash and started to douse the rising flames. 9 minutes and 40 seconds after the aircraft came to rest, one of the wing tanks exploded while the captain and the senior cabin attendant were still on board the plane. They and all the passengers and crew escaped successfully. Unfortunately, the top panel of the exploded wing tank struck a firefighter when it came back down after the explosion, killing the firefighter on the spot. The final report of the United Arab Emirates General Civil Aviation Authority named pilot error as the main cause of the accident, namely the omission of the check whether the engines provided sufficient thrust for go-around. The crew should have immediately realized that the aircraft's thrust computers were not providing thrust after the push of the toga switch, at which point the commander should have applied full manual thrust by hand. Other than that, the report also noted that Boeing's design choice for the toga switches is not ideal. While the aircraft system worked correctly in not providing thrust when the switches were pushed while the aircraft was on ground, the committee thought that it would be wise to indicate to the crew that the push of the switch would have no effect. It concluded that such a modification would be well possible. The stricken aircraft was cut into several parts for removal. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and consider to subscribe. Also let me know in the comments down below what you would like me to cover next. See you in the next one.